How can you achieve and maintain business growth? Harvard Business School Executive Education is now accepting applications for a new program, Driving Profitable Growth. Taking place in Boston from October 25th through the 28th, this program focuses on business expansion and organizational growth strategies that can lead your company into the future. Learn more about this 3-day program for senior leaders by visiting hbs.me/growth. That's hbs.me/growth.
Blog Talk Radio.
Well, hey, kids, it's a Monday. I almost said morning. Can you believe that? That's because I have a time change. I feel like I'm confused here because I'm looking at noon and I'm thinking to myself, okay, am I in the wrong time zone here? Maybe it's because it's Monday and it's the start of the week. So, welcome back, everybody. Obviously, this is my Monday edition of Sim's Chat Corner. Before I get on the line with our wonderful, fantastic author today, I just want to remind everybody about a couple quick things, and then we'll get on to the interview. First of all, I want to let everybody know when I'm on here all week long. Obviously, you know I have a show today at noon Central Standard Time. Tomorrow, I'm going to be interviewing author Wynne Charles at 1 o'clock Central Standard Time. And the best way to describe her is not only a survivor, but a successful one at that. She had a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis at a young age. And so not only has she gone on to become an author, but also an artist and an athlete as well. So to say that I am incredibly proud to be hosting her is putting it mildly. Anytime I get to promote a fellow author, I'm obviously very excited, but this is just such an amazing opportunity. So that's 1 o'clock Central Standard Time tomorrow. Wednesday, of course, back on air once again. It looks like I have a show. I apologize. I do not have a show on the 4th. Just pretend like we didn't just say that. See, this is what happens when I book too many shows in 1 week. So nobody on the 4th. Thursday the 5th, 3 o'clock Central Standard Time. That is our rescheduled show with Sean T. He happens to be also a 24-year-old up-and-coming musician who lives in New York City and L.A. I think he splits time between both. And so he's kind of a rising star. He's kind of a combination between R&B and hip-hop as far as his music goes. And so he's just released a new video as well as a new song. So we're going to be talking to him 3 o'clock Central Standard Time on Thursday. And then Friday, of course, Dr. Greg Summer is on the show, and that's 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. And one of the exciting parts about doing this is for the very first time, not only have I not had a 11-time patented scientist on my show, but secondarily, we get to talk about, wait for it, male infertility. I'm a little squeamish about this. We all know that, but the reality is he's got a lot of great information. He's come out with a new product called Track, T-R-A-K, if you guys want to go ahead and check it out. Otherwise, check my show page. We're going to be talking about how it helps folks in a more private, more discreet manner try to work with infertility. So to say that I'm super excited about that is putting it mildly, too, because he's a very accredited scientist. People have known him for years. He's done some amazing work. So without further ado, that's my show schedule. Don't want to forget to remind everybody, I literally posted the event for Art is Alive Film Festival, meaning the ticket portion. Everybody has a Facebook event page for their particular film, 27 screenings, 1 celebrity event, and fortunate enough to also be screening the Red Bandana. And luckily for us, Sarah Singer is going to be coming. So yes, she is the terrorist survivor who was on my show. She was in Jerusalem and survived a bus attack. So how grateful am I that she's going to participate in my event. And we're still working on the Scientology angle, but we all know that we can't highly publicize that, so just listen to the show or check out my page in terms of particular updates as it relates to that. So getting super excited about that as well. Don't want to forget, 26th to the 28th, and that's at New York City. That is also for Producers Club, New York City, October 26th to 28th, Art is Alive Film Festival. We're on Facebook. We also have the website, artisalivefilmfestival.yolasite.com. Please do your best to go ahead and get the word out. Order your tickets. I have a total, I believe, of 60 people that can fit per screening. My hope is to be able to fill the house with everyone. We also have a total of 20 Q&A panels along with 3 industry panels. So I can't wait to go home to New York. That's all I can say. So instead of me babbling anymore, let's get to our guest today. I'm so sorry that Christina had to wait here, but we just have a lot to cover with the weekend being over. So let's get talking to her and see what we've got to say about her new book. I'm so excited. Hi, Christina.
Hi, Sin. How are you?
Well, you heard everything going on in my life in the last 4 minutes, now, didn't you? I'm like, oh,
busy.
My God. Well, you know, I'm an author like yourself who started off doing the author thing, which led to doing the radio thing, which led to the film thing. So now I kind of have my hand in all sorts of things, including Scientology, which is kind of creepy.
Wow.
So there's a lot that goes on. Well, there is. There's a lot that happens. Plus, when I'm off the air all weekend, stuff comes up over the weekend. You want to remind people of events and things like that. So, but here we are. So I appreciate your patience. I just wanted to kind of get caught up because this is like the only time I get to talk to anybody. Because, as you know,
no problem. Yes, I know.
That's quite all right.
Too well.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you so much for coming on the show. I've had an opportunity, and I wish that I would have had a chance to cram the entire book reading into one session, but I was unable to complete your book 100%. But I can go off of what I know. Obviously, we'll have a nice different discussion about you as a person, you as an author, as well as the book itself. So hopefully we'll get a chance to cover you completely from start to finish.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you. The first thing I want to talk about, because we're both authors, and I think a lot of the people that listen to my show are creatives to begin with, meaning they're in film or they're trying to get into film or music or art. So I want you to talk a little bit your experience, because mine's a little bit different. I've kind of gotten tired of being married to my laptop, because believe it or not, I am. I'm either writing or typing something. I don't think people realize that. And I would like you to share your experiences from a writer's perspective, meaning I want people to kind of get a sense of an author's job, meaning that I know it sounds glamorous when we all say, oh, yes, I'm a professional author. But talk a little bit about the pluses and then maybe about some of the plights as it relates to your journey in writing so far.
Sure. I mean, there's definitely some of both, pluses and perils, I like to say, because, I mean, on the plus side, I think it's sort of, I think in writing fiction, because I also write nonfiction I'm a wine writer also, but in the fiction world, just being able to sort of like, you can create the lives and go places that you want to go but can't. I just think that creative element of like whatever craziness is going on in your head, you can put it down on the page, or, the life you want and dream to live, you can make it up and write about it. So I just think it's a very kind of liberating thing to be able to do that. And you can kind of do it at any time or any place, which is amazing. Right. I think that some of that is also some of the, the perils of it, because, I mean, sometimes these thoughts come to you when you're sleeping or when you're running or when you're just doing some random thing, and it haunts you in some ways. So I think there's no way to shut it off, at least for me. The creative bursts come always kind of in unexpected ways and not necessarily when I'm in front of my computer. So I find myself, tapping out things in my phone and on random scraps of paper, napkins in restaurants, whatever, just when something comes up and I know my mind will forget it, I need to write it down. And so I think that aspect of it is a good and a bad thing. The ideas just don't
definitely
quit. So I think, and I don't know if you were meaning to just like the publishing process and the writing process itself. I didn't know if you're meaning sort of the ups and downs of that side as well.
Well, we'll get to the publishing part of things because that's a little more complex, as we both know. I guess the other question I wanted to ask you is, I call myself a traditional writer, which is, when you walked into my house, at the end of the day when I actually write something, I mean that I actually write something. So literally I avoid my laptop. I mean, I do research on it, don't get me wrong. So I'm curious if you have a systematic way, meaning some authors are completely computer. I still have a Brother typewriter that I still type on. I'm getting an antique typewriter. So I'm very old school writer. So I was curious now, because for you, that probably would not work, would it? Because you are crazy busy constantly between book promotion and doing the column, et cetera. What is your forte as it relates to format, as far as how you write?
Yeah, I think I use a few different formats. I definitely, I use my phone and my iPad and my computer to kind of, when I'm really sitting down and writing a piece out, I kind of use technology in some ways just because of the convenience and the quickness of it. I can type super fast, and so it helps. I also, though, I do enjoy the act of actually physically writing things down and doing that side of it too. So sometimes when I just know I want to be off the computer, but I want to be creative, I always have a notebook with me also, because I guess I'm a little spastic in my approach to writing, because I sort of use all different methods, and it makes a little trying to sync all that up is sometimes, I've got things on my phone and things on my iPad, things on my notebook, but it all kind of comes together. So I think it's, I always tell people, like, I think for every writer, like you said, you kind of have an old school approach of a typewriter and a pad and that sort of thing. I sort of feel like whatever works for, whatever works for you. For me, it's sort of a hodgepodge, depending on the moment and my mood, actually.
I understand. I do completely. Now, the other thing that we want to brace, because this just happened to me today, is maybe I'm crazy, but the reality is that rejection is never easy. I mean, I used to get rejected like 100 times over when I was much younger and I first started out, and I just got rejected again today, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm older now, but it's harder, I think, now to get it. So one of the things that I think it's really important that we talk about is talk to your audience a little bit about if you could give some constructive or creative advice in terms of how to deal with rejection so it does not negate your purpose. I think what happens is younger writers or those that aren't used to it, they're like, you know what, I just keep getting turned down and I'm done. And so they lose encouragement, they get discouraged. So talk a little bit about that in terms of how people can kind of keep their hope up in terms of pursuing their passion without just running away at the first couple of rejections. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I would love to talk about this topic. And actually, I've been on a few panels, and I'm on a panel that's coming up. Just the panels and things are on publishing, but I think what goes hand in hand with publishing is rejection. I mean, in every facet of the world, facet of the process is rejection. I mean, and I maybe I'll start out with like the positive and then the backstory behind it. But the one thing I always say every time I'm talking or I'm speaking at something is like, don't ever give up. Like, if you believe in your work and what you're doing and it's feeding you, don't ever give up. And I also like to say, don't give up. Before someone told me this, and it's something like I kind of tack to my brain and I stick it on Post-it notice, don't give up before your next great thing happens, because it could be just around the corner, and it's definitely it's a perseverance game, and it's hard. I mean, it is very hard dealing with the rejection, but I feel like you actually, the sooner you can get used to just having a way in which to deal with it, the better, because whether you're sending it out to agents or sending out to publishers or sending out to an award or whatever it is, I think there are those people that instantly, get a win out of the gate. But I would say the norm is much more the opposite, where you're talking about mountains and mountains of rejection. Like this panel that I was on this weekend, there were a couple of us on the panel that were talking about just, that process of submitting and then getting an agent and then shopping the book, and then rejection, happens in every kind of phase of it. And you have to just, I think like you said, I don't think it ever gets easy, and sometimes it feels harder than other times. But I just think it's kind of like you have to take it in, and I say, is there, when I would get rejections when I was submitting to agents, let's say, for example, I would take a look at what they were saying. Sometimes it's a blanket rejection. And when it's a blanket rejection in some way, that should be the easiest kind of rejection to get over, because they're sending you a form letter or a form email with no reason or explanation. And it's kind of like, read it and move on and toss it, use it to wallpaper your wall if that helps you, or your desk, whatever, toss it away. Whatever. I think then there's also the kinds of rejections where they are giving you a reason for the rejection, whether it's, oh, we just bought something like that, or it's like, we love this character, but we didn't believe in this character, or whatever the issue is. A lot of times there's really constructive feedback in the rejection that can really be helpful. I mean, I got a piece of rejection from an agent way back when who, kind of looked at my book and told me, I love the characters, I love the book, but you have two stories here. You have two books here, and you need to reconcile that. And that, when I first heard that, and she had, requested part of the book and then 50 pages and then the full manuscript, and I thought, this is it. Who's going to read 50 pages and then not want the whole book? Well, this agent read the whole book, and she liked the whole book, but she told me, you've got two books here. And so, I did that one hurt, because I think that was kind of the first time that I got that far in the process, and I told myself this was it, which is another thing, isn't necessarily, you can't look at that this is it each time, because then those, rejections are harder to kind of bounce back from. But I looked at what she had to say, and I felt like I understood her point. And so I took that rejection as a really kind of a positive, because I realized she was right in what she was saying. And then I went to work at, like, how do I fix that? So I think, part of rejection is being able to let it roll off you, like water on a seal's back. But at the same time, if there's truth to those words, you have to get used to the constructive feedback and take that as a great rejection. And I think, in working with an agent at one point for the dating vendor, we were getting, different rejections from different publishers. But, she was like, this is the best kind of rejection to get this particular one, because they were like, they love this, they love that, they like the voice, they love this part of the storyline, but they bought a book just like that. But she was like, you look at that feedback, and that's good feedback. We know we're on the right track. So I just think it's never easy, but I mean, my hugest piece of advice is I had several times that I was quitting and I was giving up, and I'll end this long diatribe in 1 second. But here in San Francisco, in the area where I live, there's this big literary festival, which is coming up next week, and it's called Litquake. And every year for the last 9 years, I've gone to this festival, and they have a series of panels that are on, like, publishing. One of them is, publishers are there dishing on publishing, and this other panel is where debut authors talk about how they got their first break. And so every year for the last 9 years, I attend these panels. And last year, I was ready to give up. I was ready to quit. I was just ready to quit. And I would go to these panels each year to kind of inspire me to keep going. And last year there was this guy on the panel, and he said, and he told a story like this. I used to go to this panel every year, and this year I'm sitting behind the table. So, like, don't ever give up. And this year I'm super, super, super excited, because I'm going to Litquake, and I am actually going to be on that same panel. And the takeaway is never give up, because it may take a while, and there's a lot of bloodshed and tears, dropped along the way. But if you believe, you just keep on going. You keep on going. You keep on going. Sorry. Okay. I babbled on. But I think it's an important
That's okay.
topic.
That's a sign of passion, in my opinion.
Like, it's an essential part of writing, I think.
Oh, it is. You betcha. Absolutely. Plus, I want to ask you this, because obviously you live in an area that I can only imagine must induce some of the most inspirational thoughts in 3 or 4 books in and of itself, because obviously you're in the Napa Valley area, correct? And I can imagine, I'm picturing beauty and wine and great weather, and I'm thinking to myself, you must totally live in the best place in the United States to write. I mean, have you found that success?
Yeah.
I mean, do you think climate and environment and all that has changed a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, because before I moved up here, I lived in big cities. I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., and then I lived in New York City for a stint, and then I lived in Los Angeles before I moved out to the wine country. And when I was living in LA, I worked in the film production industry, and then I also worked in advertising. But I used to come up here. I had a friend that I work with who moved to LA. She quit her job and became a massage therapist up here. And this is what happens up here. People visit up here and they fall in love, and next thing you know, they're moving here. And I used to visit her, and I just was like, this is where I want to, like, write. This is where I want to write, and this is where I want to live. And it's, it is a beautiful, inspirational place. And yeah, so one day I quit my job and I moved up here, and that's when I decided to, try to be a freelance writer. And yeah, it's a really amazing place. They're just kind of outside. The wine is everywhere. The scenery is beautiful, and it's a different way of life. It's it's a country kind of way of life, but it also has an urban side to it with the wine and the food and all that sort of thing, which are all things that I love. So yeah, and I feel like the information, the ideas, and the creativity definitely flows because there's a lot of creative people up here. There's a lot of people that paint, there's tons of writers. There's, and winemakers look at themselves as artists. They are artists, and they're creating something from nature and from wine, and their personality goes into it. So it's this whole valley is creative, but in all very different ways.
That's very cool. And that's actually one of the similarities that you and I share, obviously, is having an affinity for wine. If anybody, and there's a few that follow me, obviously, they know that I have this, I post about wine constantly. It's like one of my biggest things. So I'm so loving you and hating you in the best way possible because I'm like, oh, my God, she gets to write about my favorite thing in the world constantly. And I'm like, oh, my God. So you totally are not getting off my show without me asking you this question. So this is one of many questions relative to the writing itself. But obviously, of course, as it relates to wine, first of all, you live in one of the best places to get it. So I'm just curious to ask you what you indulge in yourself. And if you can give your listening audience some idea of some of your favorites out there, or maybe some new things to try from a wine perspective, because who better to ask than somebody like you?
Sure. What I'll have to say, like my favorite, one of my hands down favorite wines is from Venge Vineyards, and this actually is a little bit how my wine writing started because I bumped into this winemaker, Kirk Venge, and his dad is very famous in Napa Valley because he was the first winemaker to get a 100-point score from the kind of famous wine critic Robert Parker. And anyway, so he, grew up making wine with his dad and broke off on his own to start a winery. And his wines are just, they're amazing. And what probably his favorite wine of mine, it's called Scout's Honor. It's named after one of his loyal dogs. But the wine itself, it's a red blend, which a lot of times people think, oh, red blend, that's just kind of like everything in the kitchen sink goes in there, and it's a cheap wine. But it actually can be quite the opposite. And this is a red blend that is just, it's a bodacious wine. That's the only way I can describe it. It's just really kind of complicated and dense, and just it's amazing. So that's kind of hands down one of my favorite wines, and one of my favorite winemakers. He does winemaking for several different wineries up here as a consultant, and I can I mean, this is not usually always the case, but I can taste a wine and say, like, I wonder if Kirk's the winemaker here, because his wine just has a really distinct it has kind of a distinct style, and it's really amazing. So if people are ever coming to Napa, that is like a must-stop destination, in my opinion, for the wines alone. And then I guess the other kind of comment I'd say on wine is that everybody kind of has a different taste and different palate, and different things speak to different people. So while I like really full-bodied, big red wines and Cabernets and Petit Syrahs and that sort of thing, other people, that's their kryptonite, and they're just like, oh, it's too heavy, it's too this, it's too that. So I think, up here, people can get really hoity-toity about their wine talk. I mean, I like to say, like, the wine tech geeks speak, where people are throwing around all the tannins and silky this and, all these sort of things. And I think that's great. There's, some people enjoy looking at wine in that way. But one of the first things when I moved up here, I thought there was just too much of a preponderance of that tech wine geek speak. And I started, I wrote a blog when I first moved here called Wacky Wine Sense. And the whole thought of that was just that, like, there's a lot of people that love wine. They love the taste of wine. They don't care what it smells like. They don't care about any of those technical terms. They just drink something and say, oh, I like this. I like it. It tastes like whatever to me. Or, oh, this is awful. Right. It tastes like dirt, whatever. And that everybody has their own opinion, and that's amazing. And to me, that's one of the great things about wine. It can be one person's love is another person's hate, and that just is we all taste it in a different way. So.
Gotcha. Absolutely. In fact, I had just thrown a poll about this over the weekend. I don't know if you have the answer to this, but I know that you have experience in this area. I happened to watch one of those reality shows, the Wahlburgers, actually. The Wahlberg family owns in a restaurant called Wahlburgers. And it just so happened that Mark Wahlberger had gone to a vineyard, or actually I should say a winery in Italy, and they were actually serving them wine straight from the barrels. So this had been the first time I'd ever seen this, because my understanding was until it fully matures, you're not really supposed to be taking a lot of the wine from there. So I was curious to ask it. Nobody really had the answer, so I'm like, again, let's pick your brain a little bit if you know. I'm just curious, Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, definitely. And they do, and that is a thing, definitely a thing up here, is that they do barrel tastings. Winemakers and wineries will do barrel tastings. And you're right in that when it's in the barrel, it is aging and it's not, it needs to spend a certain number of days and months in oak barrels or stainless steel barrels or whatever to be ready for bottling. However, there's a time in that process where the wine is not mature, reached its full maturity in the winemaker's mind for what he wants for it to be ready to bottle. However, it can be very drinkable at certain phases in that. And so, I mean, wine, especially during harvest and kind of the months afterwards, at any given time, winemakers will do tastings, and they have this. It's called a wine thief. It looks like a big turkey basting thing, and they stick that into the barrel, and that sucks the wine directly out from the barrel, and then they put it in your glass, and that's basically a barrel tasting. And the wine, and what sometimes they like to do is they give you a barrel sample, have a barrel tasting sample, and the wine is not bottled, and it might not be bottled for another couple of months or even longer. And if you were to taste the barrel sample and then taste the bottled wine, you would be tasting two very different wines, even though the components that went into it are exactly the same, but they're at a different kind of maturation point, and therefore taste very different. But the barrel samples are often, they usually are not going to have you sampling it until it's matured to a place where it's still a very good wine, but it's different from what will be the final wine.
Oh, of course. I gotcha. Yeah, I just found that so intriguing because I'm like, really? I never see that happen. You know what I mean? And especially, obviously, it was on TV and they were filming this, and I thought, boy, I mean, they really didn't kind of react one way or the other about, oh, the wine was wonderful or the wine was not aged or whatever have you. But I just thought it was a really neat concept. I was like, oh, my God, they're taking the vineyards.
It is.
They're taking them to the vineyards and doing this. Wow.
Yeah, if you're ever at a place and they offer a barrel sample, definitely do it because it's the wines are usually very good still, even though they're not technically finished.
Right. No, I get it. Well, thank you for that. So that definitely helps me out here because I think in Wisconsin they had done this during a wine festival, and I thought, yeah, maybe we should stay away from that. But now I'm totally down for that. So yay, awesome.
Yeah. Go for it.
Now, this is interesting, folks. Just so you know, you were educated at Towson University, and so you got a Bachelor of Science degree, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I have a question relative to this. So what's a Bachelor of Science degree lady doing writing books? Because I was like, shouldn't she be, like, inventing something or testing something in a lab? Do you know what I'm trying to say? So I was curious to ask you, do you ever get to utilize the degree, or were you going in that direction at one point and did a 360? How'd that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I did get a bachelor's degree, a BS degree, and it was in business and marketing, and which is, not at all like a BA, a Bachelor of Arts degree is very kind of what a writer normally would get that type of degree. And I was raised in a household, kind of a very old school household, Catholic household, and where, when you went to college to become like a lawyer, a banker, a teacher, kind of a traditional profession. You did not go to school to quote my dad, to be in a crazy creative career. Like that just was not, in my family's mind, an honest way to earn a living. And so I just kind of grew up with that sort of philosophy and, therefore, for the good or bad of it, never considered a creative career ever. And so I went to college and I studied business and I studied marketing. And that's how I ended up working in advertising, and I worked in publishing and all of that. And it was somewhere, in life as I started to get older and realized, while I enjoyed advertising and it was a heyday and there was tons of fun, and I worked in the technology sector and had a ton of fun, pre, during, and after the dot-com boom and all of that. But I realized at a certain point, like, I wanted to write and I wanted to do creative pursuits, like doing theater and that sort of thing. And I decided, you know what, I can do these things now. It's not taboo or whatever. And so that was part of, I had kind of a turning point in my life where I decided to kind of go down the creative path. and I'm very happy I've gone down that path. One thing I will say, having just had a book come out and been doing a ton of kind of pre-promotional efforts, the marketing and business comes in very handy because I guess I'm kind of one of those crazy people that I do have a very kind of analytical, business-minded brain, that was probably, I was branded and bred into me for many, many years. And then I have this creative side that I kind of tapped later in life. And it is very handy to have both because it's hard sometimes, I feel like, Sybil, like I have to be like, my creative person wants to do this, and my marketing head is telling me, no, you need to be doing this first is more important right now. And so while I cursed all that business background for a very long time, I'm also now seeing very much the value of just, I can't help but to look at the business angle of things. And it's very helpful in promoting a book because once you write it, then you have to sell it. And so I think one thing I did do, which I think I would recommend to anybody, is when I wrote the book, I just went and I wrote it in a vacuum. I didn't know anything about publishing, and I chose not to learn anything about publishing until I finished the book. And I feel like I'm very glad that I did that because had I done any amount of research about publishing while I was writing, I never would have finished the book. I never would have finished the book because the statistics are so, whatever. It's less than 1% of people, I think, that write a book ever get published. The statistics are not at all in your favor. And I would have been like, part of me would have been like, I love writing it and it's fun and it's, I have a story to tell or whatever, but my logical side would have been like, this is not a good spend of your time, So I'm glad that when I was doing the creative thing, that's what I was doing. And, and then when I finished, then I realized, okay, now it's time to turn to the other side of the fence, which is a lot less, I don't know. It's not as fun for me, the marketing side, as the actual writing side. But I see, you need both, really, in my opinion. You need both. So that's how I did put it. I put it to use. My
this
degree,
but
in a
in a different kind of way. And I agree with you 100%. Yeah. I think people don't realize that almost as much of the work is in the writing as it comes down to promoting it, because obviously sometimes the book doesn't sell itself. I mean, clearly I've noticed, and this drives me nuts. I don't know if this drives you nuts or not, but we live in a world nowadays where the word author, I think, sometimes gets thrown loosely, meaning that if you're a mega celebrity and you're out there, and even if you wrote a quarter of the book, you're now an author as well. And I noticed that if they have a celebrity face on the front of something, it's become so much easier for somebody to sell it. I mean, that's not a bank or guaranteed, but I do think that it does make it harder for the regular indie people out there, those that are trying to get their name out there, their face out there. It's tough. I mean, it's tough to market. It's tough to sell. We now have 800 platforms, from the Kindles to the you name it, all those different formats to use to sell a book. So it's challenging. I mean, the whole marketing side of things, and I'm with you there. I'm like, oh, my God, the amount of time that I put just into marketing something, it's exhausting sometimes. I mean, folks, you really have to have a wherewithal, and you have to have a strong will, and you have to believe in this book more than probably half of the universe, literally, because I believe it all starts with the author. If you're not believing in what you're selling, you're not going to be able to sell well. You know that? I mean, it's just I think it's just a common fact.
That's totally. It's so true what you're saying. Very true.
Well, thank you. Now, interestingly, she is married with children at this point in her life, and so I was curious to ask this because I asked this of all the people because I'm I'm a single girl, but of course I have kids at home as well, and I'm managing a full-time career, etc. So, do you find that you get yourself in a quandary where you're a bit more challenged in terms of having time for your writing, or do you feel you have the kind of lifestyle that's conducive to being a writer? Because sometimes writers go nuts because they're like, oh, my God, if I could just get 2 hours to write something. But with your life, the status quo in terms of your lifestyle, sometimes that can be really challenging. So talk a bit about the juggling act we all kind of do. How challenging is that for you? Plus, give the folks a bird's eye view in terms of, because we know you're a columnist, so are you dedicated to that on a daily, weekly basis, et cetera, just so we get some idea of what your schedule's like?
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely a juggling match, and I think the motherhood, I have twins, 3-year-old twins, so it's the juggling act is crazy, and because, like you mentioned, so I'm a freelance writer, but I write a regular column for North Bay Biz Magazine, which is a monthly column. so that's a standing thing that I'm always doing. And I also write for that magazine as well as a handful of other magazines and newspapers. And so I have assignments that I get, some that are recurring, some that are, are on the fly. And so that's, one aspect of my work. Then, of course, I have, the book that when I was writing it, and now I'm promoting that book, and then the other things in the process. And then I do copywriting work as well. And then I take care of my, children who are in preschool. And so I think it's one thing, and I heard this, I was on a panel recently that was all mothers that are writers, and most of them are also working also in addition to their writing.
Sure.
And that was the question, like, how do you do all that? And again, I think this is kind of different for everybody, how they juggle their time or whatever. But for me, right. In a former life, I was a project manager, which is all about scheduling other people's time. And that kind of comes in handy because I do have to, whether it's late at night or during the day or, first thing in the morning, I have to kind of plot out my day. And I look at, like, okay, what deadline work do I have to do? What kind of creative, am I doing a book promotion thing, or am I kind of, trying to crack at the next book, and I have to, it's like a Jenga game, game of Jenga, where I sit there and figure out, like, here are all the things that I have to do this week, and how am I going to do them? And I would say one thing that, and I'm sure it's in, given the rundown that you gave at the beginning of the show and everything that you've got going on, I think, like, I sit down with all those things that have to get done and figure out, I allocate time for everything. So I think it's like,
gotcha.
I do allocate time for, okay, this is where I'm going to just write. I'm not going to worry about, that other stuff right now. I'm going to do the writing part of it. And then, okay, now I have a column due, so I need to dedicate time to that. So I think it's just,
right.
And someone said, like, you have to get used to stealing time on the fly. Like, so if you're sitting in your car waiting for 10 minutes for such and such to begin, or whatever, a class to begin, that could be the time that you write. Like, some people write, I heard, like, someone was talking about how they wrote a book over the course of 2 years, stealing like 10 minutes on a lunch break every day to do that. So I think, sometimes people look at, like, you have to have a really specific routine of, like, every morning I wake up and write an hour, or every night I do that, or blah, 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 whatever the case is all of that is, maybe that's how they approach their day. But other people, you got to get the time you can get. Like, for me, if I can steal 10 minutes to do something, that's my writing time, and it's just kind of those stolen moments are valuable moments, and people write books that way.
Nice. Very nice. Well, and I like the fact that you have it. Most oftentimes what happens is some of us just realize, like, when was the last time you ever wrote for yourself? That seems to be my current funk is I write for everyone else all the time, and then you're like, when was the last time I did something for myself? So I finally decided the other day, I'm going to write this film because I believe in it, because I like it, and because it's important to me. But I think you need to do that. I think the point here, folks, is me time makes sense, meaning me time or lack of me time, I think, makes all of us look at things differently, act differently. It changes our whole disposition. I think we talk a lot about that as writers, because you get caught in that funk where you do some tremendously wonderful, well-written work, but it's for everyone else. And so it's important that we stay true to ourselves in terms of having some pet projects that we like so much. Now, I know in the past you have written about food and wine, meaning you've contributed to places like Weddings, California, San Francisco Chronicle, The Bohemian, 7x7. So I want to ask you, in general, overall, of all the things you've written thus far or contributed to, tell us what are some of your favorite things to write about, or some of the things that you've authored that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I would say I love writing about wine and food because I am a wino foodie person. So I love that's definitely kind of a highlight. And I get to interview a lot of winemakers, and so I think it's a great gig if you can get it, because sometimes I'm interviewing people that are, a lot of famous people like to start wineries,
Sure.
So I get to kind of do that, and which is really kind of cool. Like, I recently interviewed Danica Patrick, who's like the female NASCAR racer, famous racer.
Oh, yeah.
And she recently started has a vineyard and a wine brand that just came out. And so, those are really kind of fun and cool assignments. I mean, I also cover for the North Bay Bohemian, which is kind of an arts weekly paper in the Bay Area, I always cover the Napa Valley Film Festival. And last year I got to interview Matthew McConaughey. So that was probably hands down my biggest, exciting writerly moment. And can I just tell you this? I was starstruck, of course, but I had to keep it real and keep it business. But he is the nicest person. It was
really?
It was a carpet thing, and his handlers, trying to, blow him through the line of people. And there were bigger publications that were there beyond the ones I was there representing and writing for. And I forget what we were even talking about, but I asked him a couple questions, and he was in the middle of kind of answering a question, telling a story, and his handler was like, Matthew, come, and he just, I was again, it was an amazing moment. He looked to her and he said, I'm in the middle of talking with Christina. He remembered my name.
Wow.
And we were having truly a 1-minute conversation. He made the point. He remembered my name, all the other 20 people with me. He knew their name, and he's like, I'm finishing my conversation with Christina. Hang on. And then he looked right back, eye contact with me, finished discussing the question that I had asked. And he was so amazing to meet you. So that was, I just thought, he's a megastar and a truly Southern kind of guy, Southern, breeze, So those were some good moments. I got to interview John Travolta also at the festival a couple of years ago. There's some fun assignments.
Oh my God! Did you hear that? Did you know this? I noticed you didn't say the words. I was just going to say, I noticed you didn't say the words. I interviewed Matthew McConaughey and then passed out because I would not have been able to do that. Because good God, is he good looking?
Yeah, and he is, and so and someone that was on the red carpet interviewing line with me, as he was coming, they were like, "What if?" And this is totally unprofessional, but what if, while you're talking to him, I'll take a picture of you interviewing him, and when I'm interviewing, if you can take my picture? And I was like, "That's so cool." It is probably unprofessional, but yes, I think that's. Yeah. We can do this. We can do. It's totally fine. And so it was a heartthrob moment and a career high as well. Oh, I bet that's absolutely. And then I think the only other part of that question, I truly love. That's kind of nonfiction work that I do, but I love fiction in that you can take it wherever you want to take it, and I tend to err on the side of my writing, even in my my nonfiction writing. I err on the side of sarcasm and humor, and in fiction I can go as high and far with that as I want, which I love. Comedy is kind of I enjoy writing funny, so that's cool. I like that. That's absolutely awesome. Okay, so what we want to talk about here is another similarity we have is we both love our coffee, because I literally ran out of coffee yesterday, and I love this when I was reading this intro about you, about how she loves her coffee. I'm ugly without coffee. I've said that to people. I'm like, don't talk to me, don't say anything to me, don't send me anything until I've had my coffee. But the other thing is, I wanted to ask you about this. You have a love of dysfunctional leading ladies, and I just laughed out loud when I read that, because I'm like, oh my God, this girl must be reading my bio, because I am completely dysfunctional myself, and I'm like, I love my dysfunctional leading ladies. So give me your top three. Who are your top favorite three dysfunctional leading ladies you can think of right off the top of your head? Because I'm like, we have to compare notes. So the leading ladies, not writer of leading ladies, or the actual leading ladies themselves? You can do either. You really can do either. Okay. Okay. Well, the one is kind of a combo. Maria Simple is one of my all-time favorite authors, and she writes a mean, funny, not mean as in a mean person, but like a mean badass kind of. No, I get it. She writes functional women, and I just feel like I love that, because her characters, like the mom in Where'd You Go, Bernadette, one of her kind of most famous books, it is like a mess of a mother, but it's funny. She writes it in a funny way that at times I nodded my head and was like, yes, yes, yes. This is so honest and true. And in her most recent book, I think it's called Tomorrow Will Be Different, or Today Will Be Different, which I think I wake up every day telling myself, today will be different, yesterday was hell, whatever. But, her character in that book, again, it was kind of a afraid woman that, was having what was going to be a banner day that just bombed big time. And so I just, I think, so that's I also like in 30 Rock, I think Liz Lemon, Tina Fey's character in that show was just like just dysfunctional, but so, like, lovable and relatable at times, too. Things went over the top, but also it's just so, just so relatable. Like, I just feel like as women, we cannot be, and I say this every time that I talk about dysfunction, but we can't all be fabulous all the time. We as women, we're juggling it all, we're doing it all, and some days we are just killing it in a good way, and other days we are just not, and that's life. And so why I love dysfunctional writing about, like, in my book, Samantha is like a hot mess of the highest order. Like, she is just trying so hard to do the right thing, to be the best person she can be amid a lot of dysfunction in her family. But she just keeps messing up, really messing up. And I just feel like there should be more stories and more films and TV shows that show that honest. Like, I also love another on Amazon. There's a TV show called Catastrophe, which is a brilliant, hilarious, pee your pants, cry with laughter show. And the woman, Sharon, is she writes the show. She's the showrunner, and she's the leading lady in the show. And she is just effed up. And just in a also just a relatable way. Like, she's again trying to just live her life, and she just gets in her way constantly. So she's another, like, great dysfunctional lady character, and the show is just hilarious. If you have not watched it, everyone needs to watch the show. It's so funny.
That is like too funny. Now, do you have any thoughts on Karen Walker? She's my absolute favorite dysfunctional person ever. Karen Walker from Will and Grace. Like, she's my mantra. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not worthy of Karen. I love Karen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Karen is, what's not to love about Karen? Yes, I love her.
Thank you. That's kind of what I thought, actually. So I was like, okay, fine. Oh, and we don't want to forget to talk about this before we get to talking about the book, of course. You are a columnist for the North Bay Biz magazine, so we're always big on shameless promotion on this show. So talk to the folks a little bit about the magazine itself, in case they want to check it out or check out some of your work, because I know you contribute there. So tell us about the magazine itself.
Yeah, the magazine, it's a business trade publication for the North Bay, which is Napa, Sonoma, Marin, San Rafael, kind of like in the Bay Area, there's North Bay, East Bay, so it covers the North Bay region. And I write it's the Napa Insider column, and so in theory, I am the kind of insider of what's going on a business and for, in the Napa region. And here's where the wine comes in handy, is that in Napa, like, I don't know what the actual full statistic is. I should know this, but I would say at least 80% of the business in Napa is related to wine, whether it's wineries or winemakers or tasting rooms or what have you. There's like over 500 wineries here now. So I write about the business goings on in Napa Valley, and and a lot of that is wine related. And so and the magazine is it's focused on local businesses in all those different counties, and it does a lot of kind of slice of life that, there's a lot of people that come here to make their dream come true and start businesses and come here for that very reason. And so I think, we profile a lot of amazing people that, just came here on a shoestring to do something they always dreamed of doing, and for whatever reason, the Valley inspires people to do that, invites people to, like, ditch their life as they know it and come here, and I get to write about that, which is cool, because that's how I ended up here. I'm not some amazing person, but I just was an average Joe, average Jane that ditched my life as I knew it to come here to do something I always wanted to do. And so the magazine, I think, promotes those are a lot of the stories that we like to tell.
Very cool. I like that. Now, just so that we have notice of this, is it a monthly publication or weekly publication? I wasn't clear on that, so I forgot to check.
It's a monthly publication called North Bay Biz Magazine.
Gotcha. Wonderful. Okay, so that brings us to, obviously, The Dating Bender. So I was reading the back of this before I even started reading it, folks, and so I'm reading this and I'm thinking to myself, she almost sounds like a pseudo Carrie Bradshaw. You know who Carrie Bradshaw is, right?
Yeah.
In Sex and the City. And I was like, oh, my God, this sounds funny. So my first question to you was, were you concerned at all, because obviously this is loosely in parts based upon your dating experiences in life. So I often wonder when people do books like this, I mean, were you concerned about exes or other people or feathers getting ruffled, et cetera? Because I'm thinking, when they read this, they're like, oh, my God, that's me they're talking about. And death of it. You know what I'm trying to say?
I do. Yeah, and it is a question that people always ask me, like, oh, is this your life story? And I do like to, I constantly find myself having to remind people when they ask, I say, it is fiction. It is fiction. Now, things will, those of you that knew me when I lived in New York and those of you that knew me when I lived here and there, like, yes, some of these situations will sound familiar in places, the path that Samantha takes on her kind of rollicking road to redemption, are places that I've lived or visited or, that they were a part of my life. And so, yeah, what I like to tell people is that, like, when I started writing the book, I was single, and I kind of the heyday of singlehood, I was living in New York, and I was also living in Los Angeles. And some crazy things go down in these cities. Like, when you're single, like, I think because they're such big cities, just people, I think, get away with or try to get away with things you could never pull off, like in a small town, for example, like where I live, because, everybody knows everybody. I think because not everybody knows everybody in New York City, all those, like in Sex and the City, for example, that you had brought up. Like, I mean, I think people that have not lived in New York are like, there's no way Samantha does that Samantha does what she did and whatever, and some of those scenarios are over the top, but, but it's not that over the top, so I think those things go down. Now, in my book, in certain situations, like, I chose to go way over the top because, it's a humorous book and it's a dark, black comedy kind of thing. And so I went way over the top in places intentionally. But like, these crazy things happen in these cities, and that's kind of how the book began, was because, like, me and my girlfriends would get together after a weekend and just over a glass of wine and just talk about, like, these just some crazy dates that happened of, like, I once dated this person that turned out to be, like, a closeted snake tamer. Like, and he was a lawyer. He just looked, originally I had him, he was like Mr. Good on paper. He just seemed like, oh, this is such a great guy, whatever. Until, like, one day he was making me dinner and I showed up and he was, like, had a snake wrapped around his neck, and it just was like, whoa.
Oh, my.
So anyway, The Dating Bender originally was not a book. I never set out to write a book at the time. I just was kind of writing down funny stories because I did not want to forget them. And then as the stories continued with, girlfriends or stories that they heard or, whatever, it's kind of like the telephone game. The stories just kept coming and people were telling me things and whatever. And I was like, I just started writing things down. And then I the more that the stories, kind of the pile of stories became, I started looking at, I was raised Catholic and kind of that, all the trappings that go with that and sex and all the conflict that Catholics have over sex.
Oh, yeah.
And I started to think, like, how funny would it be, that contrast of, like, when you're single and dating and in those cities where it's, there's lots of sex happening and whatever, and then you pair that with someone that was raised in this kind of Catholic upbringing where sex is the Antichrist kind of thinking and whatever. Like, what if you make those two worlds collide? And then if you toss in there, like, I had written an essay in the North Bay Bohemian, another publication I write for, called, like, Fire Your Family. Like, just kind of playing up. It was a playful, funny essay about that premise of, like, can you ever, like, when your family does inappropriate things, can you just fire them? Can you hand them a pink slip or whatever? And,
I saw that.
And people thought it was funny, and so I started thinking, like, yeah, what if she's got this crazy family and she's got this single life and she, and she's trying to reconcile those things, like, what would happen then? And so that's kind of how it came about. It's just making all of those worlds collide.
And it's done beautifully. I mean, obviously, of course, it's always difficult for the average reader because they never know. Most people don't research someone else. So they would know it was their debut novel necessarily, which is a testament, I think, to an individual's writing. When you're able to get soaked or saturated into a particular novel or book, etc., and you're not critiquing them, you're merely reading it for enjoyment, and it flows well, and the characters are relatable, which in your particular case is true within the course of the book. When you set out to do your very first novel, was it important to you to pick something that you could relate to, meaning that would make it easier to write? I mean, did you know right from the get-go? Because I know you said it wasn't originally intending to be a book. But once you made that conscious decision in your mind, yes, I want to put a book together, do you think it is easier for us to compile something word-wise and heart-wise sometimes, because I think a lot of writing comes from right on the inside, when you can relate to it or when you're close to the subject?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that old kind of writing cliche or whatever that people are always saying, like, write what you know, write what you know. And
right.
I absolutely think that's true. Like, and write what you know can mean many different things. That can mean, I know about wine, so I write about wine. But it can just
right.
be like, it could be something you love that you write about, that you're deeply passionate about. It can be something that you hate so much that you want to write about it because you hate it so much. It can be places that you love, and you've been, and you have a lot of kind of, you look back fondly at kind of thing. So I think writing, I think most writers would admit that almost everything you write about comes from some thread of what you know, like, and a lot of times, I mean, I've heard people talk about, like, the the kernel that a character started from, was somehow, kind of an amalgamation of several different people or whatever, but that was rooted in real life. Now it took on a totally other, path it ultimately takes. But I think sometimes you start out with a kernel of truth, and it just it's like popcorn. Then it pops and it starts getting bigger and goes in different directions and whatever. Sure. But I think writing what you know, it is who you are. And I think it transforms a lot of times as you're writing it and the process goes along. All of a sudden it takes on its own other life and the character pops in your head and, and you just kind of go off into the running. But I do think it's kind of like, we had, for me, I've lived in tons of different places. I was married before. I was single before. I had a certain upbringing and lived in cities, lived in countries or whatever. And all of that is like part of who I am. And I've met crazy people along the way and I've met amazing people along the way. And I just, so I feel like all us people, we have just an arsenal of information just within us, and not that we can't write about things that didn't ever happen to us. That's where research comes into place and talking to people that have lived those lives. And, but I think that, I definitely pull from my life. And that's what I love how I do. I have a mother life I pull from. I have a reporter, journalist life I pull from, a wine person I have many lives to pull from and scenarios and experiences that definitely influence my work for sure. And it influences nonfiction work as well as fiction.
Definitely. Well, and the other question I have for you is now, of course, that the book has been out for just a little bit. Are you getting any feedback yet? Or are you getting, what are people saying or what kind of things are you hearing about their overall impressions of the book?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are really enjoying it and embracing it. I think they like the hot, a comment I hear all the time is like, Samantha is just a hot mess. She's a hot mess. I hear people say, like, I was screaming at the book. I was, like, in a coffee shop, and Samantha was doing da-da-da, and I was like, why? They were saying, why is she doing this? I've heard people compare her in certain aspects of the book of, like, a train that's en route to derail, and you can't stop. You want to stop the character from going off the track, but you can't.
Right.
You want to look away sometimes, but you can't, and so I think, and that's, I think the reaction, it definitely, it gets very sort of heated, passionate reactions I'm finding. Some people are just like passionate in the ways like, why does she keep doing these stupid things? And other people are like, she's got her, she goes for what she's wanting, and it's not pretty and it's not right, and she makes tons of mistakes, but that's so real. That's life, So I find I get very heated responses of people that feel like the character is super relatable, to some people very relatable, and they, kind of liked her torment and liked how she kind of messed up along the way, but still tried to do better and tried to live a better life, and she just kept trying. Other people were like, saw the other side of that of like, why can't she get her act together? And I think, and people related to her, religious upbringing, whether people were raised Catholic or Jewish or whatever, who were raised in a kind of that environment, I think relate to it in a way. And other people were like, wow, I didn't know, I have a friend that was raised Catholic, and wow, I never knew what she probably went through, So I think it strikes a lot of chords with people for a lot of different reasons. But I think in general, people kind of, I've had people say, that they've kind of spit out coffee, sometimes with laughter, sometimes with horror. And they're like, don't drink it in a public place because you might be spitting out food or whatever, And so it's I think I kind of, I don't do anything. I think I even write it in my bio. Like I live life to the extreme. Like I don't do anything kind of lighthearted or, gently. I just go full bore with things. And so I think I very intentionally wanted the book to be kind of invoke many reactions, love-hate reactions, and just people with convictions, contradicting convictions. And it seems like that people, are heated in a lot of different reasons while reading.
No,
so
I know,
for
definitely,
me, that's
without
exciting.
a doubt.
For me, that's exciting is that people, that's kind of what you hope that it invokes emotions for people, and it seems to be the case. So it's kind of cool. It's cool to hear that kind of feedback.
Oh, you betcha. My goodness. So now my only other question is, so for the future now, do you have 27 more books you're working on, or what can we expect in the next year in terms of, will there be another book, or will there be more of a column? What's going on? What's happening?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more of the same. I'm going to be continuing with the wine column. I love that. I've got a couple books that are kind of in progress right now, so there will definitely be more from me on the fiction front for sure. And then I have, I have a series of events coming up. I mentioned that great one at Litquake that's happening on Sunday, where I'm going to talk with a bunch of other debut authors about catching the first big break. So that's on the horizon. I'm never really content just doing one thing. So, I don't think I'll ever just be a novelist, or I'll ever just be a columnist, or I'll ever just be a mother or a wife or whatever. I think I'm at my happiest and craziest doing several things at the same time. And I think that's what we'll hear from me is like all of those things will still be going on.
That's awesome, though. Absolutely. And I don't want to forget to mention this before we go through the business end of things here. You have two different events that are coming up that I know of, one of which is on the 4th, which is at Green Apple Books. You'll be in San Francisco at 7 p.m., and that's on the 4th of October. And then on October 8th, you'll be at Litquake, which is in San Francisco as well, and that's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So if anybody is listening in, of course, and they want to meet Christina in person, you can go to either event on the 4th or the 8th. Now what we're going to do is I'll read off all the different ways to find you, meaning for folks that are listening in terms of where you're on social media and otherwise. I want to remind you, though, first, just so you know, to anybody who is a fan or follower of yours, about 2 hours after we finish with this interview, it becomes archived. And so obviously I'll send you a copy of that. I also upload all of my interviews onto YouTube as well on my channel, so that this way you'll have copies of both. But it takes about 2 hours or so, just so that you know.
Okay,
and like I said, I'll send you over a copy of that as far as that goes. Now, before I read all of this off, I do not want to forget Anne-Marie, I I don't know how to pronounce Anne-Marie's last name, so I'm not going to say your last name, Anne-Marie.
Yeah.
Thank you. With Get Red PR. Obviously, of course, Anne-Marie, I cannot thank you enough. You are her very first client that she's had on my show. So my hope is that both you and her are pleased with the work that we did today. Hopefully,
yeah,
it's been a blast. Oh, thank you. I have 2 more clients that she's got coming on, so Anne, just feel free to keep sending them to me. I cannot thank you enough because this was it's so enjoyable to me to be able to talk to other authors, and because they appreciate and they get a sense of what I go through. We mutually share a lot of the same interests. It's just so intriguing and interesting to interview authors. So thank you, Anne-Marie, for the work and dedication that you do, and thank you for bringing this wonderful guest to me. Okay, so I'm going to read all these off. Her website, folks, is Christina, and that's spelled Christina. Her last name, Julian, so it's Christina Julian, and that's JULIAN.com. She is on Facebook. She has both a personal page as well as her professional author page. She is on Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, LinkedIn, and her Twitter handle is at Christine, and that's CHRISTIN _ and then her last name, Julian, JULIAN, and of course the name of the book is The Dating Bender. Did we forget anything or any other place to find you?
No, those are all the places to find me for sure. Yeah, and my event page lists the events, and I'm going to stream from the panel at Litquake. I'm actually going to do Facebook. I'm going to do Facebook Live. So if people go to my fan page, Christina Julian Author on Facebook, you can go live at 1 o'clock Pacific time and hear the panel, or at any time it'll be posted there. So yeah, any authors that are really want to hear the inside scoop on publishing from 4 authors that all wrote different types of book in different genres, if you're not in San Francisco area, you can hear it on Facebook and see it.
That's awesome. That's cool. And plus, too, it's easier for us because that's why I do internet radio, because I'm like, then I can interview you or someone in Canada or international. It's amazing what technology does.
It is so amazing.
It is. Isn't it cool? It's like, oh, my God, this is so neat. I'm talking to somebody in California. So I will make it a point. I know that I don't always get to Napa Valley. Usually it's either L.A. or last time it was San Diego and my film festivals this month. So I'm going to try to do some traveling sometime in November or December. So if I make it to California, I will certainly look you up because I would love to shake your hand in person, meet the woman who wrote this book. I'm like, oh, my God, that would be awesome. And please do not forget it.
Wine tasting.
Oh, my God, yes. She just said it. Wine tasting, coffee in the morning, wine in the afternoon. I'm so down for this. I can't stand it. This is awesome.
Let me know. We would have fun.
I will definitely do that. And I sent you a Facebook friend request, but I noticed I'm at 5,000. But that will probably change because I'm a very loudmouth journalist. I won't lie about that, folks. You all know it. So eventually someone will get upset enough. So if you feel inclined, feel free to go ahead and accept the request. And before I forget, don't be a stranger, please. That means if 3 months down the road you have something else to promote or you just want to come back on the show, you just let me know. You can come back anytime you like. I would love to promote you anytime.
Thank you. I had so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime, dear. You have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. You too. Bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Wasn't she fabulous? I'm telling you, I get some of the best authors on here. I can't even stand it. One more time, her name is Christina Julian. The website, ChristinaJulian.com. She has a personal and professional Facebook page. She is on Goodreads, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, LinkedIn, and Twitter. The handle is at Christine, and that's without the A, CHRISTIN _ and then Julian. Again, one more reminder, October 4th, it's Green Apple Books in San Francisco at 7 o'clock, and October 8th at Litquake in San Francisco at 1 p.m. Again, thank you so much to Christina, as well as, again, Anne-Marie from Get Red PR for organizing and help to structure this interview. Oh, love my writers. So one more reminder to everybody tomorrow. Don't forget that I am on air interviewing Miss Wynne Charles tomorrow. Please make it a point to listen. Like I said, not only do I love the fact that I have so many authors on my show this week, but the fact of the matter is anyone that struggles and survives in real life and turns it into a polypositive, I cannot even explain to you what that means to me. It's so very moving. So please, if you can tomorrow, try to tune in 1 o'clock Central Standard Time. I hope all of you guys have an absolute wonderful afternoon. I don't want to forget to remind everybody, in case you haven't seen, unlike myself, most of you probably knew before you woke up in the morning about the Las Vegas tragedy. I myself just found out when I first woke up, and I was just traumatized to say the least. Thank God dangerous guy. My sister is doing well. She's alive and well, thank God. But some of you have not checked in from Las Vegas. Please, please, please send out prayers to everybody. Please let them know how much they mean to you. It all is over in a heartbeat. I say this constantly. So please make sure to show your loved ones that you care. And prayers to all of you who are affected by this latest terrorist, well, not even terrorist, I guess you want to say tragedy. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I'm going to go prep and get ready to go get my kiddos, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.